All right, we are recording. Um, well, Kim, I guess I'll turn it over to you. This is your first meeting as the chair, so I guess it's your meeting.
Great. Yeah. So I don't know what I'm doing yet, so be patient with me. I run my own board meetings, but it's not quite the same. And I'm running from meeting to meeting today online, it seems like. So I don't even have the agenda up in front of me, Logan.
Well, I can help you out. So we just need a call to order, which I can
All right,
do. Uh,
go
so
ahead.
I, all right, William Park or Alice Fletcher,
Yeah, here.
um, Kim Highland or Margaret Claire,
Here.
Emily Dreyfus or Emily Smith,
Here.
Alice Roucher or Rachel Hobbs,
Here.
and Shayla Washington or An Nguyen. So we are, down two members that will be filled eventually. That's going to be part of the discussion today. So we do have a quorum. I also need to read the electronic meeting notice. So bear with me for a second. This meeting of the Central Virginia Regional Housing Partnership Executive Committee is being held pursuant to Code of Virginia subsection C of 2.2-3708.3, which allows a public body to hold all virtual public meetings. The meeting is being held via electronic video and audio means through Zoom online meetings and is accessible to the public. The method for holding this meeting shall not change unless a new meeting notice is provided. Should the electronic transmission fail, you may reach out to the TJPDC at lnd@tjpdc.org. Notice has been provided to the public through notice at the TJPDC offices, the media website posting, and agenda. The meeting is held pursuant to the remote electronic participation in all virtual meeting policy as adopted by the Commission on August 7th, 2025. The meeting minutes will reflect that the meeting was held by electronic communication means and the type of electronic communication means by which the meeting was held. A recording of the meeting will be posted at the TJPDC within 10 days of the meeting. All right, so that's that. I will add a reminder that, and we're not really voting on anything except for the consent agenda, but to vote, I believe you need to have your camera on. So that's the only thing there. Great. And now we move on to the public comment. So if there is anyone who's here in a public capacity, you're welcome to make a comment.
I didn't see that we had anybody here from the public.
Yep. Well, in that absence of anyone wanting to speak, we can move on to the consent agenda. I'm just kind of going off what Ned does, Kim. So if you want to stop me
Yeah.
at any point, you can intercede.
I told him
Um,
this is not my forte, so I appreciate the support, Logan.
well, I just am sort of I got mine. I just am trying to channel him. So
I appreciate
um
it.
anyway, so the meeting minutes for the previous meeting are in the updated agenda packet, and the monthly financial update. That is from the June P&Ls just came out yesterday, so I didn't include them, but it's for the previous month through May. So not much to be seen in either of those, but there does need to be a motion to approve the consent agenda and a second, and then we need to vote. So, Kim, I'll let you do that part. I'm not sure.
Who would like to motion to approve?
So move.
Second?
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I guess, yeah,
Do we have a second?
William Park, I believe,
Oh, okay.
second.
I will.
I'm so sorry. For the minutes, I had William Park making a motion to approve the consent agenda and was waiting for a second. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, maybe I'm wrong, sorry.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, we need a second then.
Rachel, Kate, Emily.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, and now we can vote. I'll just go around by roll call. William Park,
Aye.
Kim Highland,
Aye.
Emily Dreyfus,
Aye.
Rachel Hobbs.
Aye.
All right, it has been approved. So you'll see on the agenda under new business, a number of things. To start with, we put on here a time to speak about sort of the trajectory of the executive committee. And I'll get into that in a second. But below that is a larger bylaw revision review that I have been doing, mostly in consultation with Christine, who is not here. That is in your agenda packet, both my sort of updated version of the bylaws and the previous iteration of the bylaws. The one that I updated has the watermark draft on it. And that is what it is. It's a draft. It will need to go before the full partnership in September. And it's pretty much an open book. The reason I began the process of reviewing it is because I was getting frustrated not having clarity on questions that people would ask me about, and I'm not the only one, you know. And it was probably a document that needed, you know, some more comprehensive change. We had amended it a few times in the past with sort of small specific amendments. But I figured it needed, like, you know, formatting restructured a little bit. You know, there was a whole section missing, you know, detailing information about the core, how the quorum works for the full partnership, things like that. So that's what I have done. So that we'll go through some of my changes later. But the two conversations between the executive committee discussion and the bylaws review blend into one another. And you'll see what I mean in a second. So you know, Ned and Keith have been the chair and the vice chair in either role forever. Now they have rolled off the partnership. Ned's role on the executive committee was in the role of elected official. So that's one of the prescribed roles on the executive committee. Keith's prescribed role was as a PDC commission appointed member. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with the current language of the the executive committee composition, so you can see what I am talking about here. If I can find my place. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. Maybe I'll zoom in. Okay, it didn't like that. All right, I can't zoom in, otherwise it disappears. Can everyone see that more or less okay?
Yes.
Okay. So this is, well, as you can see, this was from my draft revision, but I haven't actually changed any of the information that you see here. So as you can see, it says the executive committee shall include voting members representing the following: an elected official and on down. So that one elected official was Ned. He was, you know, serving in his capacity as a member of the Board of Supervisors to Albemarle, and one TJPDC commission representative, that was Keith Smith. A question that Christine and I wanted the executive committee's help clarifying. We'll get into maybe more specifics about sort of who fits some of these roles, who would be good candidates to step in. But this, I think, needs clarifying first. And back me up, Laura Jean, if I miss anything that we talked about. But so my reading of this, well, there's two readings of the way this is structured. You could either say that this the executive committee shall include voting members representing the following: one elected official. Just to take that one as an example, you could interpret that as meaning they have to be on the partnership as an elected official, meaning, and I'll use Mike Pruitt here because he's a handy example of the kind of issue you might run into. Is he is an elected official to Albemarle, but he serves on the RHP as the CARTA, the New Transportation Authority representative. So he is an elected official, but he is not on the RHP as an elected official technically. Okay, so my reading of let me just say the other reading is you could say that this sort of prescription here is less or is more broad. It's saying anyone who's on the RHP, if they are an elected official in any capacity, they're eligible for that role. So, and a similar thing could be said about that TJPDC commission representative, again, the other position we're trying to fill, is that we have a number of representatives to the commission on the partnership. Ned himself was, on the TJPDC, Jesse Rutherford, Michael Payne, a lot of our elected officials who are on the full partnership are also on the TJPDC, but Keith Smith was, specifically appointed by the TJPDC to be their representative on the RHP. Okay, so, one interpretation is that's the only person who can fulfill that role. The more broad interpretation is that anyone who is on the partnership who is also a TJPDC commissioner could fulfill that role. Now, the reason I think this is all important is because I think the bylaws, in my understanding, are meant to sort of serve us and facilitate us, filling these roles with people who are interested and capable to do them, in the sense that if at all possible, I want to avoid scenarios where like one person has to be on the RHP, by virtue of whatever, or has to be on the executive committee by virtue of their role on the RHP. So, for example, Christine and I had just mused out loud, and I promise I'll turn this over to you all to talk about in a minute, but I just wanted to give all this background. What if instead of, these roles, we had 4 roles that represented each of the 4 pillars. So, a citizen, a nonprofit, a for-profit, and a government official, and then 3 at-large members, something like that. Or we could just have the language here be slightly more clarifying and say, regardless of their capacity to which they were appointed to the RHP, they, as long as they, fulfill one of these roles, they are eligible for the executive committee. So that's sort of the backdrop to this, as we try to ascertain who would be sort of good candidates to fill these 2 roles. So I'm going to stop talking. I assume that there will be questions, but I'm going to step back and let you all sort of discuss.
In my opinion, the looser we keep it, the better. So having, people from the four pillars, or having 10 roles and 7 of them must be, 7 of them are executive committee members, but they can fulfill any of these 10 roles. Or as you said, I like how you put it, Logan, with the 4 different pillars being represented, would be appropriate, because then the government side, we could also have a planning director be our representative, and or also have an elected official. So having people, that are diverse from this group would be appropriate. If it gets too tight, right, then we run the risk of not being in compliance.
Yeah, my, to the extent that this is valuable, my personal feeling is that, we want the bylaws to be firm in the sense that they have like a clear direction, and clearly there was a direction when this was established, in terms of, there being a rationale for having these prescriptive roles. And so I don't want to, um, undermine that entirely. But I do want to offer us an opportunity to, make this as flexible as best serves us. And so, at least in my, I think at the minimum, a reading that is more flexible of these sort of qualifications is preferable, because it gives us kind of more options as to who can fill these roles.
Yeah, Logan, quick question, make sure I'm tracking. You using the first, let's say example, one elected official, but we're still saying to be on the executive committee, the elected official has to be on the RHP, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Right. It just comes about because we have a number of people who are kind of serving in multiple capacities, and so, um, one question for y'all to consider as well is, does it pose a problem if, like, let's say if I'm appointed to the RHP, because I'm like a healthcare industry representative or something, but I'm also an elected official to Albemarle or something. So I have those 2 roles, but my role in the RHP is through the health, the health side. Should I be serving on the executive committee as an elected official? In my opinion, I mean, I'm not either of those things, but I think that people can hold multiple things at once, and are multiple things at once, as we have a ton of folks who are. So anyway.
Logan, I've got another question that,
Sure.
and it's not exactly who can serve and who can't serve, but when I look at the rural service provider, the next to last bullet point there, that's an area that it's hard to find representatives sometimes. Is there any reason you single out rural nonprofit service provider? What does it matter whether they're profit or nonprofit? I would think anybody that's a rural service provider would be eligible.
I think that's a fair point. Yeah, again, I don't know the exact circumstances under which these were. As far as I'm aware, these are, have been the same since the inception of the partnership, but I can't speak to the exact logic behind, making that specifically like a nonprofit rural service provider. I mean, I think across the RHP, there's, and you'll see in the full partnership membership, for example, there's an urban citizen representative and a rural citizen representative. So there's like, there have been attempts made to, account for the sort of rural urban divide. But I can't speak. I mean, if again, I'm part of the reason we're bringing this up is because I'm doing this big old change-a-roo of things. And so, if this is something that you all would like to see amended, we're happy to sort of make some of these tweaks. And then, again, it has to go before the full partnership. And ideally, we'll have, we don't have to decide everything today, but ideally going forward, we'll have, prior to the next meeting, a coherent document that we can give to folks to review and vote on. So, but yes, to your point, William, I don't think that there is anything that's necessarily tying that down. I'd like to hear from other folks, though.
I like I was wondering about that too, William, because I'm the rural nonprofit person. But there's definitely other people who are in the rural areas. I would like to see 2 of the 7 positions be filled by rural representatives, considering the population that surrounds Charlottesville. I think the rural areas are underrepresented by their own fault, right? It's not anybody else's fault. But it might encourage us to reach out to more of the rural areas, whether it be an elected official, a government worker, a for-profit builder such as yourself, right? Or a nonprofit. But having a little more rural representation, I think, is something that the CVRHP has been striving for. So we're a little more balanced.
Yeah, and I would agree, and that's the point I was making, Kim. It's just, it's hard to find service providers in the rural area, and as long as you're providing the service, it shouldn't matter whether you're profit or nonprofit. To me, I think
Right.
it broadens the potential people that could, bring ideas to the executive committee. So that's just my thought on it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that layering it, Logan, with having the 4 pillars represented, and at least 2 of them maybe with rural representation. That opens the door to a little bit of variance in there without giving us some guidance, giving us the variety that we want. Each of the pillars needs to be represented, and ideally we represent each locality in here. But I think then we're getting a little too stringent. I don't want to beat a dead horse. I
Yeah,
know we have gone through this over and over again.
right. Well, so I mean, yeah, it sounded like that's favoring more of what Christine and I have talked about in terms of, the roles that are already on here and we could amend this to just say the rural, but um, that represent each of the 4 pillars and then kind of 3 at-large members. The other thing that, to what you were saying, Kim, an idea is to add a clause in here at the beginning that says, including these roles, but ensuring that 2 of the 7 represent rural. There are other ways to phrase that. You could say that 2 of the 7, you know, come specifically from a rural area. It doesn't matter which ones. Like it wouldn't have to be the nonprofit service provider, things like that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and again, I just want to say that after this meeting, I'm gonna take a stab at drafting up what you all have talked about, and we'll run it back by you. So
Thank you, Logan.
Are there other thoughts on sort of this part of the bylaws? It's sounding like we're moving towards making kind of sort of a four positions representing the 4 pillars and 3 at-large reps, and so I can draft up the specifics of that and run it by you all. But is that sounding like it's representative of what you all feel? Okay. So I'm glad we got that out of the way. That still kind of leaves the work to identify who we think would be good candidates for some of these roles. And so just a reminder, according to the bylaws, and again, I guess this is all kind of strange because we could change this because we're in the business of changing things at the moment, but as it's written, the full partnership votes, which is as it should be, I think, on who is on the executive committee. So they have the final say. And the executive committee doesn't have an explicit role in terms of nominating like it does with the officers, for example. But it's my understanding, I think it's implied that the executive committee, in conjunction with the staff, will kind of do some of the legwork to find folks who are, we think would be good candidates for those positions. And so I guess it's kind of a little funky because now we're sort of shifting the ground under our feet a little bit. But I will say that in conversation with Ned, as he was the outgoing chair, or as he was the outgoing chair, he had conversations with two of his Albemarle, fellow Albemarle representatives, Sally Duncan, who is not yet on the partnership, to be clear. As far as I'm aware, Albemarle has not appointed her. I think she is volunteered to be that person for Albemarle. And Mike Pruitt, who was obviously also on the Albemarle County Board of Supervisors. He is currently on the RHP as the CARDA representative. So those are the two people that Ned and I spoke about as having some interest. But that is not indicative of who needs to be fulfilling these roles. And so I want to open this up to some conversation about that. I don't know that we'll come to a decision about who we think is best, but I at least want to plant the seed. And it might be easier for people to do this if I have changed the bylaws to represent what we've just talked about in terms of the composition of the executive committee. But if there are folks that you guys have had conversations with, through the RHP or otherwise that are on the partnership that you think, would be good candidates for the executive committee, I think it's a good opportunity for us to talk about that, or at least, say, hey, I talked to this person. Why don't you, Logan, reach out and gauge their interest.
I'm happy to talk to them too, Logan. You might also just put out a call to all the members to see who is interested, because sometimes that surprises you. Somebody has an interest in serving in a greater depth in this role who's already involved, and we don't know if we don't ask everybody who might be interested. I was surprised, Shayla was interested in being vice chair, so we didn't know until we asked.
Indeed. Okay, I think that's a very reasonable suggestion. Again, we don't have to decide. This could be something you email me about later, but I wanted to plant the seed that, as you folks have, such a preponderance of experience with the RHP and on this body, that you would be, very well qualified to offer an opinion on it, should you choose to do so. So,
Hey Logan, could I ask a question?
sure.
Are there specific qualities or is there a certain knowledge base that the group collectively agrees is missing or is needed, or has there been discussion about that? I don't usually attend these meetings, but I'm just curious.
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I think that's something that is a good topic of conversation if folks have thoughts about that now. I mean, I don't know that, and you can see, I think I'm still sharing my screen. It says on there in terms of qualifications based on individuals' talent and their organizational affiliation. So it's not overly prescriptive. I think at this point, it's whatever we kind of sense is needed on the partnership, but that's up to you all, or on the executive committee.
Yeah, Rachel, I mean, to your point, they've been discussing this for quite a while about who's missing from the table, who should we have here, who isn't able to participate and would like to, what kind of benefits could we get from them. So they wanted to open it up to suggestions. And that gives us more options if we just say they need to be representing the 4 pillars and we need at least one representative from each pillar. Yeah, who are we missing here? Who should be participating?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, in some ways, maybe if we, if we are switching this to being, the 4 pillars, which are already represented here, we have resident, we have a nonprofit, at least one, we have a private sector service provider, and we have a government representative, again, at least one. But, having it structured as 4, explicitly 4 roles that serve the 4 pillars, and then 3 at-large members that sort of fit any description, I think at least gives us the flexibility to in the future be more adaptable. One of the concerns that Christine and I had with moving forward to find someone to fill Ned and Keith's role before we kind of got to this question was exactly that. Like if we haven't changed this and it's still too prescriptive, it doesn't allow us in the future, sort of in unforeseen circumstances, to get people who might be excluded from, because of how prescriptive this list is, but are well qualified and are engaged and interested in serving on the executive committee. We didn't want that to happen. So maybe y'all's suggestion will sort of guard against that. Okay, well, I think that's a good place to leave it, unless folks want to interject with anything else. But, this is something you can email me at any time about if you have thoughts. And I will draft up these changes we've talked about. And I'm going to jump in. I'm kind of behind, I guess, but jump into outlining the other general changes I've made. And so it'll all kind of be in one big basket. Let me stop sharing and share my own. So unless folks have an objection, I'm going to move on to the general bylaws revision. And I know I'm kind of eating up time here, but I'll try to be fast. There is a memo in the agenda that details this. I'm just going to share my screen with my Word document that has some of my comments, because I was trying to keep straight all of what we were changing. Okay, hopefully you can see that. So, and you can go back and look at the old iteration of the bylaws or the current iteration of the bylaws. But basically, one big thing Christine and I identified was that the executive committee had quite a bit written about it in terms of its quorum, its vacancies, things like that, sort of the basic functioning of the executive committee. But there was nothing written about the full partnership, really, in terms of how it should function. I think it was implied that it operated very similarly to the executive committee. But so I've gone and drafted out the terms of office, things like that, filling vacancies, the place of meeting is, the same as the executive committee, but quorum, things like that. I do want to note 2 things here, chiefly. One, I reformatted this so that it's kind of broken out by these are the locally appointed or locality appointed representatives, by their either board of supervisors or planning commission, and then who is appointed by the TJPDC, and then who is appointed by a different board. So kind of makes it a little bit more legible. The other thing is, previously there was nothing written about this. So there was, I think, implied there was no term of office for full partnership voting members. We,
Let me
So-
stop for a second
oh,
right
go
there.
ahead.
I'm sorry. What why are these all TJPDC appointed?
That's a good question. I don't know exactly why that was decided. Um, I think that was, I think, before the RHP existed, I guess it was birthed out of the TJPDC, and so
Right.
um,
I
the
think
folks
as
that
it
had,
stands now is its own separate, it's not really a separate organization. It falls under the TJPDC umbrella, but I think allowing the CVRHP to steer itself is appropriate at this stage.
yeah, well, I agree with that. I cannot argue with that. Yeah, maybe this should all just say CVRHP appointed.
Well, or just, as these are
I
the
think,
appointed representatives. I don't think you need to say CVRHP if it's under appointed representatives.
right, well, that's true too. This might be redundant.
Yeah.
All right, let me add a comment in here to change that.
Yeah. If this is the section, I mean, that would be a big change that maybe should be considered because this whole section is the section appointed
Yeah.
by.
It's all TJPDC appointed.
Well, I kind of assumed, I guess, when I was reading this that meant the RHP, but now that you said that, it implies that's the full commission, doesn't it? So that is confusing.
Right.
That's another one of
Right.
those things that as you read through, you're like, I'm not entirely sure what was the intention behind this, but this is a good opportunity to make a change there. So you all would prefer that this was just explicitly CVRHP.
Yeah, I just think, I mean, it's just a conversation to have. What are the strengths of the CVRHP on its own? It's
Yeah.
certainly backed by TJPDC, but if it can do some of its own steering, I think it strengthens the regional housing partnership.
Duly noted. Other thoughts on that? Okay, great. Noted. The other item I wanted to bring up was formerly there was no term limits, and I didn't want to impose term limits to make our life more difficult in terms of finding people. But Christine and I, had discussions about how it's kind of a challenge if there's no end date. And so, folks who maybe aren't, present often or kind of, otherwise this gives sort of a convenient way for us to have people kind of roll off after 2 years. But there are no limits to consecutive terms. So you could just kind of keep serving in perpetuity. So that was kind of the idea behind that.
Do we have a minimum of how many meetings that must be attended in a year?
Well, I think it's one.
Okay.
But, part of enforcing that in terms of like, I don't know, I guess booting folks off. There's some years there's mitigating circumstances around people's not attending. I think it's open to discussion, but I thought it would be good to have kind of this fail safe. It's that sort of is a 2-year end point, and after that, it's implied that we can find someone new to fulfill the role. The other thing that's important to note here is that previously, like, we haven't been synced up with like appointing bodies schedule, and so my understanding is that a lot of local governments appoint at the beginning of the calendar year, more or less, in terms of appointing folks for all the various bodies that need their representatives serving on. And so also trying to sync up with that. And so having our terms start then is also
It may be reasonable to tie that together and say within that 2-year period, at least one meeting must be attended if within 2 years
Yeah,
appointed official has not attended any meetings, they will automatically be rolled off and a new.
yeah, that's a good way to be specific about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But an alternate counts as someone attending for you.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
Yep.
correct. Yep.
Logan, I want to go back to the term of office there. So you've got the 2-year term, which makes sense. I've never been on a board that didn't have a finite consecutive term, though, meaning, you can serve two
Yeah.
consecutive terms. Most boards I've been on, it's been a 3-year term, and you could have 2 consecutive terms, so you're 6 years.
Hmm.
It would seem to me on this that if you, after 3 consecutive terms, looks like to me you ought to roll off. I mean, that's just my
Yeah.
opinion, but I don't know.
Sure. Yeah, that's very valid. I think, yeah, I mean, I don't think, in my thinking, I was opposed to that at all. I think we've had folks who have sort of been on and, who have continued to want to serve. And so I guess I wanted to, respect that. But, we've had folks within more recent years like Greg who have, kind of been like, I've been on here for a while, I'm going to take a step back. And that's been sort of the only mechanism we've had for, sort of a cycling through of folks. And if we want that to be 3 consecutive terms, I think that's also a good idea. That's the limit. I think that makes sense.
I think the downside of that is the number of years it takes to get expertise in this field and to be valuable. What do you think, William?
Yeah, no, I agree with that, Kim. The other flip side of that, though, is that you get some fresh ideas
Yeah.
too. So I'm just saying, and it doesn't have to be 3, but it just feels like to me there should be some limit, but that's just my comment.
Yeah, I think 4 might be just a little more forgiving if we have, people who've been in the industry for a while.
Okay.
That gives 8 years. I think 5 would be maybe too many, a decade, but they could also serve as an advisor now that we have that advisory role if they want to continue to serve after that.
Mm-hmm.
And
But
maybe we could get Congress to do this too, Kim.
I would like that. I agree. We need some fresh faces.
Okay, so having a limit to the consecutive terms is desirable. I will make a note of that, and we'll show that back to y'all once I've made that change. All right, very good. Again, a lot of the other stuff in here was just sort of verbatim what is conduct of meetings and things, which was from the executive committee. We already talked about this, sort of making this whole section more clear. One other thing I wanted to bring up, this was not specified previously for the executive committee, but because, and Kim, I believe your alternate is Margaret on this, on the executive committee. And so, but, for example, Shayla, your alternate in the partnership is your alternate, on the executive committee. I just wanted there to be an option for, if someone else fits the role that you're serving on the executive committee, that you can have them be your alternate for the executive committee if so desired. Anyway, that was just my way of making this a little bit more flexible.
Logan, excuse me, another question.
Yes.
In this case, let's take, for example, Kim is the chair, and she can't make it for that meeting. So at the next meeting, who presides over the meeting? I mean, it should be the vice chair, not the alternate for Kim, correct?
That is correct, although I don't think we have anything specifically that details that. So that might be something good for me to flesh out.
It should be the vice chair.
Yeah, it should certainly be the vice chair, but it doesn't say that anywhere. So I think I need to.
Yeah, I agree. I think that might fall under Robert's rules, though, correct?
Maybe so.
I
But
don't know. I'm not that
it
familiar.
couldn't hurt to make it a little bit more explicit. I agree, William. I will do that. So yeah, in the absence of the chair on the executive committee, and same with the full partnership, I guess, the vice chair will preside. Okay. Noted. What else have we got to note? Yeah, this is another thing that's worth talking about too, is the executive committee, technically these are 2-year terms, and although it says shall hold office until a successor is appointed and qualifies. And this one does say shall not serve for more than 3 consecutive terms. Do we want to change the language there at all? I kind of like what you were saying, William, about the capping the consecutive terms. And it's interesting that this has a cap and the full partnership didn't. But maybe we want to keep this 3 consecutive terms cap for the executive committee as well, in light of our discussion about the full partnership. Okay. Oh. That opens. So it does mention that. Kate just brought to my attention. It does say the vice chair shall perform the duties of the chair in his or her absence and perform other such duties as prescribed by the executive committee. Okay, so that is in there. Thank you, Kate. Those are sort of the substantive, changes. I made like a ton of little tweaks all over the place to, the formatting and like taking out adjectives and things like that, it's not worth going through. Oh yes, this is another item that I also wanted to bring up. So this will, serve until for 1 year or until their respective successors are chosen and qualified. So that's pretty open-ended. But this is also, I removed this provision saying that the officers have to be elected each year at the beginning of the fiscal year. That was something we weren't doing anyway, and was, I think, maybe slightly overly prescriptive, particularly if people are sort of serving consecutive terms. So that was a change I made.
And we are about 10 minutes out from 2 o'clock, Logan. Do we have a lot more?
No, I think that's mostly it, really.
Okay.
So, yeah, I've gone over here, but I did want to get this all in front of you in an adequate way. I appreciate you bearing with me before, we sort of take it to the full partnership. And again, I will take all the changes we've discussed and make them, and I'll probably run it back by Kim and Shayla first in our sort of smaller meeting, and then we'll send it out to the folks to double check my work.
Appreciate the work you've done on the slogan and coordinating it.
Thanks, and I appreciate y'all. I've been looking at this for so long that I'm starting to get confused just talking to myself about it, and so it's nice to have
your
y'all's
eyes start to
feedback.
cross.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Thankfully, I am mostly done talking. So I'm going to turn it over to Emily to discuss our draft annual report, which we are working on, and she'll share a little bit about sort of the idea for that report and where we are.
Yeah, thank you. And I can share a little bit of what we have so far. For those of you who haven't seen it, we are putting together an annual report. We have most years we do an annual report. Unfortunately, we are not quite ready with a full one to share with you yet, but we wanted to share what we had so far, including what we're including in it and the kind of the key themes that we're focusing on, to kind of get feedback. Right, so in general with this report, we want it to both document everything that has been done over the past year, especially with changes that have been introduced, having speakers at the full partnership meeting, different programs, all of the work with the housing study, to have that as kind of a good way of seeing what we've done, like thinking through how to grow, but also as we think forward to the housing summit next year, we want this report to be able to function as a document that we can give to people outside of our circle, including potential sponsors, to share what the RHP is, why it matters, what we do. So these are the sections that we're including. And in general with these, we are trying to lean more towards it being pretty graphically focused and data focused, so that way it can balance kind of the detail to make it useful for the people who are kind of involved in everything, but also the general public so that it can be understandable, and have enough context for that. So we're including, and each section is maybe a page or two. They're not very long, but having our mission statement and membership, a year in review with key themes, functioning as sort of an executive summary, and that'll be in this presentation, summarizing the full partnership meetings with each of the speakers that we've had and key discussion points, speakers and topics for the Lunch and Learn series that we've been doing this spring and summer, including some data around how well attended they were, data from the first year of the housing study with a focus on really anything quantifiable. So the number of focus groups hosted, data trainings held, listening sessions, things like that. Some updates on the housing programs that the TJPDC staff administer, in order to tie the vision of the RHP to, I guess, money and units happening on the ground, and then goals for this upcoming year, mainly the housing summit, finishing up the housing study, and then building on what has been done this year. So with the key themes we have, we wanted to prioritize covering education through the speakers and the Lunch and Learn, data, mainly focusing on the housing study and all of that work, and then relationship building, which wasn't quite as directly tied to programs, but especially if we're going to be using this report to explain the RHP's goals more broadly to another audience, we wanted to prioritize that, as kind of central to who we are and the work that we do. So that was just a very, very quick overview. I was trying to keep it short for time, but if anyone has thoughts, feedback, anything that you would like to see in this report, anything that you don't think is necessary, feel free to share now or email me afterwards.
Do we have anything fleshed out in this, Emily, or we just created the outline? I know we were just saying we want to at least get an outline started.
So we have an outline. There are, I would say about half of the pages are finished, but not all of them.
That's great. Okay, good progress. What's our timeline on this to get this out?
I think ideally in the next few weeks. My term as a Vista is coming to a close fairly soon, so before I leave, for sure. But
what's your end date?
August 13th.
Okay, why don't we put a soft deadline on that?
Yeah.
knowing it could flex, and we'll have at least Emily's draft if it's not finalized. But the goal would be, I think, to present it to the whole of the CVRHP at the next regional meeting, right, or the next full
Yes.
partnership meeting.
Yep.
Okay, excellent. Is there like an impact? Are we going to show some statistics with impact? What we feel like maybe has been done throughout the region. It may not be directly CVRHP. It may be broader in TJPDC. Just to show, I'd like to be able to show donors what the impact is from this organization.
Most of the numbers we have are like number of people who attended the trainings, for instance. And we definitely have numbers related to the study. And I think this is a great opportunity just for y'all to be thinking about what you want to see in the future, what kind of data we want to collect from the RHP to be able to show donors in the future. Definitely when there's like a specific program or a specific effort, we are measuring that as best as we can. But things like relationship building, there might be ways for the RHP to be sorry, this is this is something I'm very passionate about, is collecting data to show outcomes. So it might be worth the RHP really thinking about what kind of data do you want to collect from yourselves about how the relationships that you're building in the RHP are impacting the work that's happening out in the community around housing, since that is such a big part of the goal of the RHP. So I know you guys are thinking about goal setting. So when thinking about goals, thinking about how are we going to measure the outcomes of those goals would be great. And I'm happy to help in the background wherever needed, as that is something that I can contribute.
I love that. Yeah. And that's stuff that we can show clear goals, clear accomplishments to donors. We're making an impact in housing. How are we doing that? So I love that, Laura Jean. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we can segue, and again, I know we're a little bit off the timing, but maybe a good opportunity to segue into the goal setting discussion. Kim and Joe, we had talked about having some time to do that. I'll let you sort of lead that discussion, Kim, but we did have a couple questions sort of to get the ideas going. And one of them was what you all just said, what are kind of the goals for this next, tranche of time for the RHP? Has have things like the speaker series been successful in terms of, to your mind, in terms of engaging both the membership and folks beyond that? Are there other things that, in terms of engaging the membership, that we could do? I'll remind you that, we started in the last year or so, having speakers at the full partnership meetings, both from people who are in the partnership and external presenters, things like that. And another prompt, being sort of what do you need from this organization, from your perspective, and from your organization's perspective? And these are also questions I think we should ask the full partnership, in the next meeting as well. But anyway, that's just to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, I'd like to everybody you talk to in any in the government sector and private and nonprofit, money, right? What are we going to do to increase funding for this region for housing? How can the CVRHP help facilitate that? And I think we have such great brains in the room to contribute to this, breaking out into smaller groups, that have a variety of, a government person, a nonprofit person, and a for-profit person, preferably by regions that they are impacting, right? So they can actually come up with ideas to facilitate real projects. What do you guys want to see? What are we missing? How can we do that? And just kind of spitball ideas and let people brainstorm together. I mean, it's kind of, the old concept of brainstorming, but really solidify those connections with one another, and, I think William had to drop off, but what can William do through a nonprofit that he can't do through his for-profit, or vice versa?
Mhm.
What could we do through a for-profit company that would help facilitate them in creating additional affordable housing? I think there's a lot of ways we can be working together, which is the whole purpose of this organization. And we can further take advantage of everybody being in the same room. And yeah, that may involve bringing in additional speakers. Are there experts that we can hire for the region that can help us utilize the skill sets that we have, the organizations that we already have involved? There's funding we're probably not going after that we just don't know about.
I think those are all great points. Does anyone else have anything to add? Again, I think this is something that it's good for this body to ruminate on, and then maybe can help lead the discussion at the with the full partnership. So if no one has any thoughts today, please be thinking about that.
Logan, is the question for the goal setting section of this agenda about what the RHP wants the goals to be for the coming year?
I think both the coming year and its, future writ large. We are in a new era, sort of, in terms of uncharted territory. We have like a new leadership group, and it's a good opportunity to set both short and long-term goals, I think.
What is the process for establishing the goals right now?
I'm not sure that there is a formal process. It's whatever we want it to be, as far as I'm aware.
I'm happy to help with a formal process if we want to collect, because I know we have the strategic plan that has now expired, but I know we have a lot of new members that we could collect ideas from, and then hone in.
Yeah, for sure. I think we should be more intentional about that. Why don't you and I have a chat and see what we can work out. Great. Okay, anybody else on this topic? All right, well, please, please be noodling on it, and we'll circle back. Lori G and I will discuss maybe some of the concrete steps in terms of what we want the outputs of the goal setting to be physically. Okay, if there's nothing else,
do we have an update on the housing study?
Yeah, that'll be in our sort of staff updates. That's really all that's left. I'll let Emily go first with the Vista updates. I will say that I just want to thank, this is, I think, because of the timing of everything, this will be the last, I know that she's not going yet, but this will be the last, either executive committee meeting, or full partnership meeting that she will be in. She'll obviously be in sort of our agenda setting meetings and stuff. But I just want to say thank you so much on behalf of the executive committee and the full partnership for all that you have done. And obviously this is weird because it's not goodbye, but I just wanted that on the record that we appreciate all that you've done. And I will give you an opportunity to give any further updates. I know you spoke about the drafted annual report. Before I do that, though, I somehow have neglected to formally introduce Kate With, who is our new Director of Regional Planning, and this is her first meeting as well. This is something I should have done at the beginning. But before I let Emily talk, I just wanted to make sure I did that and give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and say some things about about your, I guess you're just getting started here. So we're very happy to have Kate.
I'll be really quick. Hi, everybody. I started July 1, and I've been spending a lot of time just getting familiar with all the work that we do here, and I'm excited. I'm sure I'll have more to say later, but nice to meet everybody.
We're very happy to have Kate, and excited for her to sort of get more embedded in the partnership. And with that, sorry, Emily, take it away.
Yeah. I guess on the topic of introductions, even though I am finishing up my year here, there will be another Vista, so keep an eye out for an introduction email in probably a couple weeks. I think she starts August 10th. So you'll likely receive some communication from her introducing herself. Other than that, I just want to really quickly plug we have another Lunch and Learn event next week. It'll focus on housing as part of economic development for like a city and government. I think it'll be really interesting. Our speaker is from the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond, and is going to bring a lot of data about the region. So it'll be a little technical, but he's a good speaker. So I'm excited for it. But yeah, that's all.
I'm happy.
Oops, I was muted, sorry. Yeah, I was just gonna say I'll pass it over to Laura Jean.
Okay. Great. Yes, Kim, thank you for asking about the study. Yeah. So we have completed a little over a year, it's really a year and a quarter now of a 2-year process. So there is a solid technical report draft when it comes to the needs assessment. It breaks down the entire region. It also breaks it down by each locality within our region, and it is quite detailed. And that report will then is being built upon. So that includes a literature review and a ton of data analysis that is then informed by a bunch of focus groups. You'll see all the numbers in our year-end report. But what we are doing to build on it is working with Housing Forward Virginia. So for those of you who know Jonathan Knopf and his team at Housing Forward Virginia, they are partnering with us both as a region and with almost all localities, every locality that opted in, to develop a narrow set of strategies for the near future so that when this report comes out, the super lengthy technical report and then a shorter consumer report that's designed for kind of lay people to read, for anyone in our region to read, it will be really clear what each locality is committing to based on them having seen the data and the needs assessments and working with Housing Forward Virginia on different potential focal points. And I will say it's pretty diverse what's happening in each of our different localities. And so we are really thinking about what the regional strategies should be. And we'll probably be involving all of you in the process. Once we receive, he's kind of drafting, he's calling them menus of lots of different policy, programmatic, lots of potential interventions. Although some parts of our region have so many interventions happening that actually they're focusing in on kind of like being a little bit more intentional and thematic. So like I said, it's pretty diverse how that's looking across the region. But so that's kind of the moment in the process we're in. So it's kind of like right in the thick of everything where we have all of this data and all of this analysis. We've done a lot of listening. And we're working with these experts on helping us with the next steps. And I know a number of you are involved in that process, actually. So what's great is that everything kind of worked out timing wise, where the final reports will be coming out in March of 2027 with everything from all of the data that has been collected and everything that's in there, as well as these strategies being really fleshed out and clear. And then right after that, we will be having our regional housing summit. So this is our 4th summit. I know you guys have kind of heard me talking about it a little bit on and off the past few months. We have a wonderful steering committee that is going to start meeting in August. Shayla Washington, Charlie Armstrong, I have a hard time saying that, from Southern Development, who is not on the RHP, but we had asked him to join us as someone who has been engaged in some of the projects that the RHP has been doing, and as someone who produces housing in the region. Keisha Washington from Habitat for Humanity of Greater Charlottesville, Mike Pruitt, who is on the RHP as well, and Candy McGarry from Nelson County has joined us as well. So that is going to be the steering committee. Right now, from the staff side, we are just in the thick of developing our sponsorship, like we kind of have a really complex database from which we work to reach out to sponsors, developing the sponsorship packages, and what we want to be asking from folks this time and what we can be offering as well. We're also working on speakers. There's kind of its own database there, and we're kind of imagining a few different tracks like we did last time, kind of imagining who is going to be attending, and if there are 3 breakout sessions for each of the 3 different time slots, which ones different people might want to choose, and making sure that they could go to 3 that would be interesting to them. I won't talk about all the tracks right now for sake of time, but one that we're thinking of is if we are trying to invite additional potential funders of housing work at this summit. That is part of the goal based on what RHP members have said to us, that we are going to be trying to highlight some of the things they can be funding in our region. So that is going to be one of the tracks, is really focus on locally what's happening. Not all the tracks, we're still going to do some kind of bringing in outsiders who can give us fresh ideas. But just kind of wanted to fill you guys in that that's something that really has risen to the surface as important. So we're going to try to highlight that this time. And we are finalizing venues. I will say the evening venue the night before that has been the cocktail hour, at which we thank sponsors and get to have some of the speakers there, and RHP members tend to come, was traditionally at Common House, which is closed. So we are looking at a range of new venues. If there is one that you really love and that you want to suggest, please feel free to reach out to me. There are 4 right now that I'm talking to, but it's very possible that our team doesn't know all of the great venues. So please feel free to suggest them to us. But yeah, so that is kind of the quick update. Everything's kind of in process. So I look forward to giving you more information next time I see you.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Lori Jean. Logan, do we have anything else that we need to share?
I don't
Oh,
think
did
so,
Emily
but
want to say something?
Emily, yeah.
Yeah, I just have a question, Lori Jean. I was wondering about the report and the part that Housing Forward is working on. Are they looking to make recommendations, or are they looking to include what the localities are currently planning to do?
Yeah, so that's kind of happening in 2 parts. So what they're going to have in the report is going to include what we're calling an inventory of existing resources, which is everything from policy and programs, et cetera, that is addressing affordable housing. But the strategies part, the goal is that every locality will have maximum 3. We're thinking 1 or 2 for a lot of them, that like I said, it's just really different based on the locality, because for some places it's not taking on an additional new thing, it's honing in what they're already doing. And for some places it will be taking on something new that the data has told us is going to be helpful. So Jonathan's great. He calls it an iterative process, because it is. So they look at the data, and they've been listening from the very beginning, listening to what staff, citizens, electeds have been seeing in each locality from their own observations. So when they're looking at data, it's not just kind of black box data. It's really having listened to a lot of people. We did a ton of focus groups too. And so they're taking all of that. And so the menu of kind of options is taking the expertise at Housing Forward Virginia of what's been done around the country and has been effective in places like ours, and presenting that to our local folks. And then it's the actual people in each locality, leaders generally at this point, who are narrowing that down to what is maybe politically feasible, what is the most meaningful in their locality. And so that's how we're going to get from kind of a large list from each place down to like 1 to 3. And so when we started talking to Jonathan about potentially working with them, this was now years ago, what we liked was that they do not put something in the study that there is not already local commitment to doing, because we've all seen studies where it says we're going to do this and then it's never done, and that is one of the most disheartening things, I think, for everybody. So that's really the goal, is to make it like we're going to try to pick really both applicable because of what we see the needs are, but also feasible and realistic, so that we can really make progress. They've worked with so many regions like ours around the state and even around the country. And they're really encouraging us to be smart. Like in one of our most recent meetings, they were saying like housing is tough because there's so much more need than there is like current resources, right? So we have to be really strategic and do the things that are going to make an impact and know that we are not going to be able to do all of the things, but not let that make us do nothing, but also not try to do everything and then kind of fail at it all. So that's kind of some of the direction that they're trying to give us, I think.
Thanks. It's a long way off also, like more than 6 months. A lot hopefully will be emerging. But I like the process that you've talked about. And I also love the idea of having a list of potential solutions so that it can be used in the future too.
All right, very good. I don't have any further staff updates, I don't think. I do want to leave us some time though for the roundtable. So I think we can go ahead and proceed to that unless Kim, you've got something else, but if not, I'll turn it over to you for the roundtable.
I don't really have anything else. I appreciate everybody being here and your patience as we continue to grow this process. We just received our next 3 houses. So thank you guys for the help that you guys have provided in that. Virginia Housing has been a big part of that. So we are continuing to look for the remaining funding for the following 18 units. So, and we just wrapped up our fiscal year. And again, we did about $450,000 worth of repairs in the region. So a staggering amount, really. And with increased funding, we could have done even more. So always looking for repair funding. Who else do we have? Go to Sean next. Oh, did he just drop off? Sean, do you have an update? Okay, we'll go. How about Emily? You want to come back on and tell us what updates you might have?
Sure. I don't really have anything too new. I've continued to work on the issues around the zoning and how the city implemented core neighborhood corridor overlays, which was envisioned as a way to have very gradual transitions between the core neighborhoods, which are predominantly Rose Hill, 10th and Page, and Pipeville. And the way that the city implemented those overlays surrounding the core neighborhoods was very different from what people expected, and certainly different from what people who are advocating for affordable housing and slower displacement would have wanted to see. So yeah, the city has indicated they're very pro-development, the majority of city councils, and so the big luxury student housing buildings are going forward. There's also a hotel Chris Henry's proposed that's right near 10th and Page and Rose Hill in the on the Preston Avenue corridor. So there are some big potential changes afoot, and I'll just keep advocating for deeply affordable housing. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Shayla, are you still on? I'm glad you could join us.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry I was late to the meeting. There's a lot going on. We have our point in time count this evening. Still looking for volunteers. It's been really tough to recruit this summer, I think, because of a number of factors. But I think there's a lot of misinformation and kind of negative information going out about the unhoused community and this encampment in particular at Freebridge and Zero East High Street. So it's been tough, but yeah, we're still plugging along with whoever we have and doing that tonight and tomorrow morning. There's also a 2-week assessment project happening at specifically Freebridge and Zero East High Street encampments. That effort is being spearheaded by City Councilor Jen Fleischer. And she's also working with some staff from UVA Health and Pacham to get these surveys complete. As of this morning, they've done 38 assessments from the Freebridge area. Sounds like some people are kind of already displacing themselves and going to other sites just because they're hearing a September 1st deadline of when to close the encampment. And so they're going other places and might be harder to find them, unfortunately. So as far as I know, the city is planning on moving along with shifting folks to Holiday Drive for a congregate shelter site. And they're looking into a potential hotel or motel opportunity for folks who wouldn't be able to fit into a congregate shelter for whatever reason. Like, for instance, if they have pets or if they're a couple or something of that nature. So that's still moving forward. And we're just trying to plug in wherever we can to be helpful and make sure that the perspectives of people with lived experience are being centered in some of these conversations, because I fear that that's not happening. But we're still trying to advocate for that as much as possible.
Thank you. I know you certainly have your work cut out for you right now, Shayla. That's a tough one. Do we have anybody else still on who wants to share an update? Going once, going twice. Well, thank you all for attending. I know this was a little dry with a lot of the functioning of the CVRHP behind the scenes, but I think it's really important. And thank you, Logan, for doing all that that nitpicking, very important work that really makes things flow smoothly, though, once we get it all lined up. I think it's critical to kind of moving into this next phase of the CVRHP. So with that, can we close it out, Logan?
I think so. I think all you have to say is something to the effect of, now the meeting is adjourned. I don't know if I can do that.
Meeting adjourned.
Great. Well,
Thanks,
thank you all
Kim.
so much. And yeah, we'll talk soon. Again, one last thing, I'll send out my updates that I make so the executive committee folks have an opportunity to look at them. So
Perfect. And don't forget about the lunch and learn next week.
thank you so much. All right.
Everyone.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Well, take
Thanks,
care.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.